Yeah, I think the main thing that like people need to be aware of is just what a dangerous time this is because of U.S. weakness. Uh, like like in 2023 it was. She went and spoke with Putin, and they talked about, how they would be leading a new era. And she said there are changes happening in the world that haven't been seen in 100 years, and like we're the driving force of that. That might not be the exact quote, but definitely like Putin and Xi see this as a very unique opportunity for them in history where the US is weak. It's failing at its job of being um I guess for lack of a better word, like the world police keeping authoritarian regimes in check. And this is a very dangerous moment because China is pushing the envelope. And I think they're seeing that they can push pretty hard and pretty far. And the US is not really willing to push back.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, we have red lines and then we just let China step over them with no consequence.
Well, no. He misspoke when he said material aid. It's lethal aid. And that hasn't happened. Ignore all facts to the contrary.
So one thing I was reminded of is a while ago we had on our podcast Dave Stilwell, who had worked for the Trump administration as, I believe, the Assistant Secretary of State for Asia Pacific.
Yeah.
And we were talking to him about Taiwan and like, should the U.S. officially declare like a strategic alliance with Taiwan or something like that, and should we maintain our strategic ambiguity about what we're going to do if Taiwan's invaded? And his argument was that it makes more sense to keep strategic ambiguity. And that kind of bothers me. It's always bothered me about the Trump administration because I feel like it's nice to have red lines because then you know when they're stepped over. But if you have strategic ambiguity, but you're constantly pushing back in ways that China doesn't expect, then you could actually be at a strategic advantage, which is that China does this thing with the axes and spears, and then you do a patrol around the Second Thomas Shoal with American destroyers and aircraft carriers. You send them to the Scarborough Shoal like a big thing. And then China's like, whoa, like we didn't cross the red line. And the U.S. like, well, we didn't tell you where the red line was.
Oh, I think his point was that if you're going to have a red line, then you have to make sure to defend that line. You can't have a red line and then get wishy-washy about it, right?
Right. So is it better to be ambiguous about what our own red line is?
If you're not going to actually hold a red line.
Right. The problem with red lines is they don't actually go from horizon to horizon. So China can sidestep them. Like it is an unexpected move for China to attack an inflatable boat with sharp objects. Like, I guess among the things that I thought the CCP would do, like that's just wasn't on the list. Right. So the question is, did it cross a red line or not? And I say that's a sidestep of a red line.
Which is why I think David was making a very good point that the U.S. should actually be learning from the Philippines instead of having this kind of, colonial attitude of like, the brown people.
I think that it's like the U.S. Is letting itself off the hook by saying, okay, we offered help and they said that they can handle it.
Yeah.
But there might be other reasons that the Philippines wants to handle the refueling missions to Second Thomas Shoal themselves that have to do with their own political things or their own calculations, that they don't want the U.S. to step in on that. But I forget who we had on that was talking about thinking more creatively about ways to counter the CCP. But I think what David was talking about were ways of thinking more creatively.
Yeah.
Right. About, okay, well, maybe you don't want to directly interfere with whatever plans the Philippines has for the Second Thomas Shoal and the Sierra Madre, but you can do these other things that have to do more broadly with the CCP trying to come in and claim this part of the West Philippine Sea, or trying to maybe start dredging a new island near this other shoal. So there's different ways to think creatively about it that won't
Yeah.
escalate the situation or whatever they're afraid of.
And I think that was the problem with the U.S. response about like, oh, do you want our help with refueling or something very specific? And they said no. And the U.S. can be like, okay, fine. We don't have to do anything. Instead of the U.S. should have been like, what can we do to help? Rather than giving like the specific thing that maybe they had a feeling that they wouldn't accept that help. And now the U.S. doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
it's just an excuse.
we don't know, right, exactly what
I like
what
to
went
think
down,
the worst of our government. That's my right as an American.
It is your right as an American. But yeah, I think it was interesting what David was saying too about trying to get ahead of the CCP's version of things.
Yeah, because their response was the Philippines rammed our ships. It's just like Tiananmen Square. Oh, the poor PLA they were being fired on by the armed protesters, and they didn't want to fight back, but they had to save the country. China is the victim.
You know, they had to defend themselves.
Shelley,
with
I'm being
axes.
sarcastic.
Okay, yeah, okay. I didn't know
You
that.
see.
Don't you have a master's degree in sarcasm?
Hey, yeah, that's $500 million I spent. That's an exaggeration. It's only hundreds of thousands. God, student loan debt is a problem.
Well, you know, we were talking earlier about the whole Ukraine issue. So, as we're recording this, there's a NATO summit going on in Washington, D.C., and NATO actually accused Beijing of becoming a decisive enabler of Russia's war against Ukraine
Oh,
and demanded that it halt shipments of weapons components and other technology. So,
oh my God, this is a strong statement.
yeah, we'll have to see what happens if they don't. You know, if NATO demands that they halt weapons components shipments and they don't, then what happens?
Another strong statement.
I don't know, but I mean, it is a. So the interesting thing about this is NATO was trying to not like mention the CCP essentially. Like they've never. It took them until 2019 to mention China at all.
Yeah.
As a concern. So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens after this.
Well, I mean, I can give some suggestions about what they could do if China is, in fact, which it is, supplying weapons to Russia, which is the main, the biggest Western European economies stop trading with China in certain industries. I mean, you don't have to completely decouple, but you could stop in certain key industries that are ones specifically designed to hurt China and their leadership more than they hurt that country, right? I mean, the EVs thing they're already kind of doing.
Huh. You see how they stepped around that?
Oh, no, I didn't see the latest on that.
So to get around that, China's partnering with, oh my gosh, I hope I'm not forgetting. I think it was Turkey. I'm now confusing a story that I recorded today about Hungary and one about Turkey. I'm pretty sure it's Turkey.
But you're saying that because you're hungry.
Could be, and it's Turkey now. So anyways, they're now going to be China is going to be building EVs I'm just going to quickly double check, in Turkey. That's how you say it, Turkey now. They're going to be building cars there, which has a different agreement with the EU, so these Chinese EVs can get in around that 38% tariff.